How many horror movies have you watched where a group of friends stumbles upon an isolated cabin in the woods, only to find something sinister waiting for them there? The forest has always been depicted as a mysterious place. We're drawn to the woods in our stories, but we also know we should stay away. There's just something so terrifying about what could be lurking behind all those trees. In today's video, we'll be exploring the darker side of the woods. Because in some places around the world, the trees aren't the only things growing there. We'll be looking at the Wendigo, a terrifying creature said to stalk the frozen forests of Canada and the northern United States. First appearing in Native American folklore, the Wendigo is said to be the embodiment of greed, hunger, and most notably cannibalism. In the Algonquin legends, the Wendigo is an evil spirit that can possess anyone who eats human flesh. The possessed individual becomes increasingly monstrous, craving more and more human flesh until they are transformed into a horrifying creature with an insatiable appetite. When you think of a cannibal, the first thing you might picture is a man covered head to toe in tattoos with a sharp knife. But the Wendigo isn't your typical cannibal. The term itself translates to "he devours man." It wasn't merely the act of eating another person that caused this curse, but rather it was done out of desperation or plain old greed. Back when Europeans began exploring North America, the indigenous tribes were wary of the newcomers. They soon realized these explorers would do anything to survive, even resorting to eating other travelers who froze to death on their journey. This disgusted the natives, and so that's when the legend of the Wendigo began. It was a warning to those who did such a thing, telling them they would become monsters. Some stories say that the Wendigo is not a separate entity at all, but the spirit of those who committed cannibalism are cursed for eternity to wander the woods, forever starving and forever hunting. But if it is the souls of cannibals, then it makes sense that the Wendigo would appear in the coldest months of the year. After all, winter is when people are most likely to freeze to death, and according to the legend, this is when the Wendigo is strongest. One of the most well-known stories featuring the Wendigo comes from a harsh winter in the late 1800s. A trapper named Elias was working his trapline near Lake Wendigo, which is now known as Lake of the Woods. He had been out for weeks, but the storms were relentless and he couldn't return home. Eventually he ran out of food and was forced to turn back, but it was too late. His cabin was buried under a thick layer of snow. Elias knew he wouldn't make it through the night, and so he did the unthinkable. He dug up the remains of a fellow traveler who had frozen to death on his way and ate him. That night, Elias awoke to whispers outside his cabin. Shadows stretched abnormally across the snow. A foul stench of decay filled the air. From the tree line, glowing eyes stared back at him. Hollow, hungry, endless. Then it spoke, beckoning him to come outside. Although terrified, Elias couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. Perhaps if he gave in to this monster, it would end his suffering. He stepped outside into the blizzard and vanished. His cabin was never found, but the creature was spotted by others in the area, stalking through the snow, leaving behind massive footprints that seemed to absorb into the snow. Every once in a while it would let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed across the lake, and sometimes people swore they heard the sound of crunching bones. There was a man named Henry, who lived off the land and claimed to have seen the Wendigo many times. One day, he and his 2 dogs were traveling through the woods when they came across a small clearing. There, in the center of it all, stood the creature. It was emaciated, almost skeletal in appearance. Its arms were long and crooked, its fingers like talons. Its lips were pulled back from its teeth, revealing a dark, moist cavity. But its eyes were the most terrifying thing about it, wide and black, soulless and empty. Henry immediately called for his dogs, but they didn't budge. They seemed transfixed by the creature. Then Henry noticed something strange. They weren't looking at the Wendigo at all. Instead, they were staring directly at him. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, and Henry could feel their gaze boring into him. He backed away slowly, trying to keep calm, but the longer he stared, the more he felt himself being pulled towards them. The Wendigo let out a deafening roar, and Henry ran. He never looked back though, and he never took any other travelers through those woods ever again. But this is a story that's been told and retold for years, with many different variations. There's no single account that everyone agrees on, but all versions share common themes. If you stumble upon someone who seems desperate in the woods, offering them food and shelter could result in your doom. Many a traveler has fallen victim to this fate. A hunter or a hiker might see a pitiful sight along the trail, perhaps a bloody meat cleaver lying beside a pile of half-eaten meat or a lone boot print in the snow that shouldn't be there. They might hear a whimper in the trees or catch a glimpse of movement just beyond their vision. And although some believe the Wendigo to be nothing but a myth, there have been sightings reported in the woods of Canada, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Is it possible that these are just lost tourists who have gone off the beaten path and encountered something they were unsupposed to? Or could this be evidence of something more sinister? Could there really be people out there who resorted to cannibalism in order to survive? Maybe some things are best left undiscovered, so if you plan on hiking through the woods anytime soon, make sure you keep an eye out for those lost souls. If you stumble across a situation where someone is stuck in the snow, hypothermic and barely clinging onto life, you might want to run the other way. That is, unless you have a taste for human flesh. Now it's time to make your voice heard. Do you think the Wendigo is real? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're at it, make sure you hit that like button. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.